We are back again with a legendary wide receiver, Herman Moore, and this time the Lions beat the Packers at Lambeau Field. The season's over, unfortunately, but we went out with the bang. How are you doing, Herman Moore?
Hey, you know what? I am doing fantastic. Our beloved Detroit Lions went down to Lambeau or over to Lambeau and beat up on the Pack. Hey, Mike, you got to give me my kudos, man. I sat there and I told everyone, I said, listen, the Lions will take care of what they need to do. They're going to go do their business in Lambeau, and that all they needed was Seattle to do their job. But unfortunately, we're here. So it's a tough one, but at the same time, this is kudos to a team that went out and did everything they need to do to claw their way back into respectability and also gaining the respect. I told people the North is on notice. So remember, coming into this year, 2023, I look for the Detroit Lions to be highly competitive, not just in the NFC North, but I look for them to be highly competitive in the NFC, period.
You called it. So now you have to call it every single week going forward because clearly when you call it the Lions win, I want to go 17-0. So you got to do this next year. Every single game you got to call it because that was fantastic.
Well, you know what? I haven't had that kind of success in the past whenever I make prediction or at least the bold predictions about the Detroit Lions. But this time I went out on a limb and said, listen, I'm as an alum, I'm gonna ride and die with them no matter what. But I really feel that having the opportunity to not only beat Green Bay at Lambeau, but also to sweep them during the season was outstanding. We saw so much growth and confidence. I love the confidence I saw in this team during the game, before the game, and then the camaraderie and the class and the good character that they had after the game and how they took that win in closing of the season. They've got to feel fantastic going into the offseason. Kudos to Coach Dan Campbell. Kudos to his coaching staff, to the administration that did a fantastic job in turning it, not just a culture down in the locker room, but I think around the entire organization. So that was great to see.
It was clear as day that the players for the Detroit Lions had a chip on their shoulder. You had Aaron Rodgers saying, we can't lose to that team. Jamal Williams, many other people on the team remembered that quote. They talked about it endlessly. And you've seen Quay Walker in the game push a medical staff. The Lions stayed true to the Lions. They didn't shoot themselves in the foot. They stayed professional. They took it and went and ran with it. What is something that you've seen here? It is different from years past, right? That we stayed our way and we didn't get into the dirty stuff like the Packers did.
I think that what's different in this team is that they don't get caught into the mystique that is surrounding their opponent. They're playing the game as you're supposed to. You prepare during the week, you go out, you put your strategy together, you get yourself ready and game ready, and then when you come in on game day, you execute. And because they keep it as simple as that, they don't worry about Lambeau. They don't worry about being on the road. They don't worry about whether this is one of the best teams in the NFL with the most dynamic players that are on the field. They're going out and saying, if we take care of business, we're just as talented, or we are giving ourselves an opportunity to win football games. That's what's different about this culture. That's what's different about this team. I don't think they're looking past opponents. They're just looking through them and saying, listen, we have to take care of what we can control. And we've heard that all the time. And that is what we can do in the preparation that we can have. And they're going beyond that and saying, if we do those things, and we do them right, we're going to win football games. And that has proven to be the case. And right now they're on cloud nine. They're flying high, and I don't know what's going to bring them back and down other than themselves at this point.
They have won 8 of the last 10 games they've played. The expectations next year is going to be skyrocketed. We're talking about winning the NFC North, hosting a playoff game, and trying to win. Do you think that they can meet those expectations if they do everything right in the offseason? Acquire more players with talent in the draft and everything. Do you think that is the expectations and they need to meet those next year?
Where they're going to have no choice but to meet the expectations because they're going to be high. I will caution in this. So let's use this scenario. Let's say that the Lions, first 10 games of the season, they started out basically 8-2, but then they had a collapse and went 1-6 down the stretch. Right? You're basically back in the same position. So it's not about finishing strong and collapsing at the end, or collapsing in the beginning and then finishing strong. You have to have a good mix of consistent, strong, just smart football play throughout. You got to be competitive. You must win the games you're supposed to win, and then you're supposed to take some games where they're close, and the ones that you don't win, you have to be able to come back. And I don't know if you're going to be able to get a 17-0 undefeated season type team. There's just so much that bounces around from year to year. So expecting the same Lions team that we saw this year to come back next year, there's different things that can change. There's different dynamics that can happen. It's going to start all over. So I wouldn't come in too high, but I definitely would come in with greater confidence than what they had coming into the season, because they truly know and they've proven what they can do if they go out and they just basically can't get around the word execute, man. That's what made the difference between the beginning of the year to the end of the year.
If you're watching this right now, hit that subscribe button. We're 20 subscribers away from getting to 5,800. So if we get to 20 of you, that would be effing fantastic. Let's talk about this offseason. What does Brad Holm need to do to acquire more talent? There is obviously issues on the defense. Do you think that that's where they need to strike? Do you think they need to go offense? What do you think looking at this team?
When I look at them offensively, I think they feel that they're squared away. With the exception of continuing to add some depth in some positions, I think they're full. As long as they can keep the receivers healthy, they feel confident in the guys that they're bringing and they're taking to the field with. Offensively on the line, they're solid. I think we've seen that they have depth, that they have guys go down. The quarterbacking position, we don't know what happens in the event that a guy like Jared Goff gets hurt, because we haven't had to see what happens with the backup quarterback. Defensively, there's always going to be areas that I think you can get better because offenses change. So you may have to take a player that you thought one year was the type of player that would defeat certain offenses, and then the next year coming in, you got to kind of change your defensive mix just slightly, whether it's more athleticism, whether you're getting bigger up front, or whether you're getting faster on the outside edge, or you're having coverage in the secondary. So for them, I think they're just going to look at it and evaluate what's happened. I thought this secondary grew. I think you have some really good strong play that's happening at the linebacker position that is allowing them to play sideline to sideline. They do get exposed quite a bit there, and then I'm just a little bit concerned that once teams figure out a way to run the ball against the Lions, they had a tremendous amount of success. So they have to figure out a way to stop that, because teams aren't trying to test them on the outside edges, because they were a little bit better. The Lions were good on containment, but where they lost a lot is in between the tackles for the line, where teams were really exposing them.
One thing about the Lions is they want to complete this offense. Do you think there's a potential for them, even though we got DeAndre Swift, we're probably going to re-sign Jamal Williams? My expectations would be, because he's such a great leader, great teammate. Do you think they could add another running back in the draft to really complete this bad boy and make it the three-headed monster?
You know what? I don't know if they go after. I don't think running backs would be high on their list, because of the fact that they have just a good, as amount of depth at that position. I don't think right now that's something that you look at and that becomes alarming. Even if a guy like DeAndre Swift gets hurt, or whether you get rid of him or you trade him, you still have that. But I think this is not the same offense if you remove him from it. So I think you got to bring both of those guys back. One, because they have advanced knowledge of the offensive system. They have the understanding of their support players, whether it be the line or whether it be the quarterback. You know what they can and they can't do, so coaches understand how to use them. And I don't think a lot of people realize, even if you go get another player, that player I don't think is going to be, even if they're Pro Bowl caliber player, they may not be just as good or better than having a guy like DeAndre Swift or Jamal Williams, because they understand the dynamics of the offense. You understand the chemistry of how to use those players. And how many times have we seen teams get rid of a player, they bring in another player, and that player just kind of bombs out, and then they just continue to rotate them. That could be everywhere from an all-pro player to a Pro Bowl player to just a good, solid starter. There are no guarantees they succeed in your system. So I don't think anything's broken there. So I would be a little hesitant to start to mess with that mix a little bit, and I put a lot of my time and energy towards the defensive side if I'm going to look at making any significant changes, unless the cap itself creates a problem and you can't keep those players, which the Lions, if they keep having all these players, especially being that they're young, play as well as they're playing, it's impossible for them to be able to keep everyone together.
Lions offensive coordinator Ben Johnson, news been breaking that multiple teams now has requested an interview for him to become head coach. Houston Texans, Carolina Panthers, Indianapolis Colts. I'm sure more will come down the road. What will the Lions do if he gets hired as a head coach for another team? How would you come to this offense? Would you elevate somebody within who has been around the system with Jared Goff and Dan Campbell, or would you look outside?
But one, you're not going to be able to keep the system. It reminds me of a guy we had by the name of Tom Moore. When he was here, he took his system with him. And we were probably in the 90s, that's when we were at our most explosive, dynamic, getting really multiple players involved where you had impact at the receiver position, the tight end position, the running back position, elevation at the quarterback position. Then he went off and, when he went to Arizona, he went down to Tampa, and they had success in each of those places, and they had Super Bowl opportunities. He went over, he was over with Peyton Manning over in Indianapolis. So when you're able to take that system, if Ben Johnson takes his system and he finds the right caliber of players that are similar to what he had here, and if he has that type of system like Tom Moore had, to where it's plug and play with players and you still get the success as long as you understand the recipe of players and talent that's needed, then that's going to be a big problem for the Lions, because you can't keep that system and replace it, because there's constant tweaks that are being done with the architect of that system. So if you remove the person who's really the originator of it, or the person who's really running it and controlling it, it won't function the same, even if you elevate people who think they know that system, because the assumption is that that person is giving you all of their knowledge, and they've given you everything that they've done to make certain decisions that they've made in terms of the game and how they manage that. So I think that this is going to be a tough offseason for them. This is going to be a tough offseason for Ben Johnson, because it's not often and it's not guaranteed that every year you're going to be asked or be looked upon as being head coach type caliber coach that can go from one team and have success and then take it somewhere else. So he may jump on that opportunity.
Lastly, really good question here. It's probably the best one and very important. Did you play with a guy named Barry Sanders?
The name is familiar. Is he Barry? Yeah, Barry Sanders. Oh, I didn't know it because we never went by his last name. We only went by Barry, 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 Barry. I know that guy. I don't know Barry Sanders. He wasn't a two-name guy. You've kind of done it, and you've done the right when they only call you by one name. I'm looking to just be called Herm or H. Don't even call me Herm. Call me H.
The H man. Well, I thank you again for doing this, talking Detroit Lions victory. This is what we do on this channel. So if you ain't subscribe. We're doing this all off season, all season. That's what it's all about. It's Lions forever, man. Let's go.
It is. Let's go. Appreciate you.
Perfect.